Irish squad for the November internationals has been named, folks. It is a mix of the consistent picking of veterans, which we've seen from Andy over the last few years, along with a few kind of single-digit cap guys, along with two uncapped players in the squad who featured for the emerging Ireland team in recent times. We'll go through the squad, the expectations for them, and the kind of upcoming fixtures they've got, and you guys can let us know your thoughts. Andy Farrell doesn't like to chop and change. It's not really his thing. Him and Rusty Erasmus are kind of similar in that regard, and that they are quite happy to keep backing the veteran players. Like, of all the squads that I've been having a look at thus far being named for the November internationals, or going back the last few years, the squads which have tended to be the oldest and tended to be the most consistent are the Irish and the South African sides, these two big sides in green. It is a real shame you guys are not playing each other this November, because I feel like that would be another clash for the ages. But as I mentioned, they don't really like to chop and change too much. They like to introduce small amounts of kind of inexperienced players, either through injury or when, somebody retires or has other family commitments, or just some youngster has come through and deserves a shot. But it is not a balance of 50-50. It's not a balance of 60-40. It is very much keep the core together and introduce the new guys little bit by bit. They are helped by the fact that they do have the emerging Ireland squad, where they can really chuck a bunch of the youngsters kind of into the deep end without it being at that full test level. So that is also a reason I feel like we partly don't see as much chopping and changing from Andy. I mentioned the squad is experienced. Like, the average age is around about 28 and a half, 29, which is slightly younger than the South African squad, but there's certainly a fair few veteran players in this lot, and some of them are in the front row. Pleasing to see Heffernan, Herring, and Kelleher are your three hookers there. Not that we've really seen much game time from Herring or Kelleher, as there seemed to be a bit of an injury crisis with the Irish squad. Sheehan's obviously not in the squad because he is still out injured, but the fact that you got two of the experienced guys there, and then Heffernan, who has been playing regular rugby for Connacht, is good. It means you're not going to have to throw some uncapped lad in against like the All Blacks in test number 1. Props: Beelan, Furlong, Healy, O'Toole, and Porter. That's pretty steady as she goes. Cian Healy is closing down on Brian O'Driscoll's Irish cap record. I think he's only a couple away since making his debut in 2009. What were you doing back then? I had not long graduated. I've been graduated university for a few years, but I was off abroad, gallivanting around in my 20s. Cian Healy was playing international rugby. So yeah, long time ago, but he's still knocking about. 37, he is the oldest fella in the Irish squad. Still makes him several years younger than me. Porter is one guy that's been a little bit under the microscope for not just in recent times, but this season it's continued. The amount of penalties that's been given away. I think he's played 3 games for Leinster and given away 6 penalties. So we'd obviously like that to be reduced a little bit. But Porter and O'Toole are the only 2 props who are still in their 20s. The other 3 guys are on the wrong side of 30. Locks, it's good to see Iain Henderson back after he missed out on the Tour de South Africa with injury. He is another one of the kind of veterans who comes back in. McCarthy, Ryan, Byrne, and then I guess Izichukwu and Baird are the kind of other kind of lock loose forward guys. You got 3 guys there in Byrne, Izichukwu, and Baird who can, they can be 6 or they can be in the second row. It kind of depends on where Andy wants to play them. But you feel like with McCarthy, Henderson, and Ryan there, plus if Byrne goes in the second row, that's more like your choices of the second row. But I don't know. Izichukwu seems like a pretty dynamic dude. If he's going to get his first cap, that will be maybe Fiji is the game they target. Because as I said, Andy doesn't really like to chuck guys in the deep end. But he looks the business when he plays for Ulster, so fingers crossed he is able to get a crack. Lucy's Doris, who's going to captain the side. Peter Romani is named, but he is still on the road to recovery. I don't think he'll be available early on. Cian Prendergast, Nick Timoney, and Josh van der Fleer. Cian Prendergast and Izichukwu are actually the 2 youngest guys in the forward pack, both at 24 years old. Prendergast does have a few caps to his name, though, so I feel like he'd be pretty happy with the forwards. I mean, the Lucies is an area, like many of the squads, to be honest, like the Welsh squad, I could have said the same thing. The All Black squad, we can say the same thing. I mean, the Box squad, we can say the same thing. There's notably a number of good loose forwards who miss out. Like the fact that the Irish squad is too deep in depth for the likes of Gavin Coombs, for the likes of Max Deegan and others. Just speaks to the depth they have. I mean, if Doris is captaining, he's pretty much guaranteed to play. He's probably playing number 8. They could play him number 6. Van der Fleer is likely going to play 7. And then there's potentially one more spot, depending on how they want to shuffle around the back line. Do they go for a bit of height in the line out by putting one of those kind of hybrid guys in? We'll kind of have to wait and see. Backs-wise, Casey, Gibson-Park and Murray are the 3 halfbacks. Connor Murray is the oldest back in the squad at 35. It's another area I feel like you guys have got a fair bit of depth. Like Doak doesn't get into the squad. Blade drops out. I think he was on the tour to South Africa, right? He's only been playing on the bench for Connacht in the URC. But yeah, Casey gets the nod, and Gibson-Park being back into the side is a good one because he is a key cog in that quick recycle ball game that Andy Farrell likes to play. The 10 one is interesting because you got Jack Crowley, who's the guy at the moment, and then you got Sam Prendergast, who's potentially the guy for the future if he's able to take that spot away from Jack Crowley. He was playing for Emerging Ireland recently. And then you got Kieran Frawley, who, despite having an injury recently with those ligaments, apparently he's progressing well enough to be named in the squad. He could also play fullback or 10, depending. So there's genuine competition for that 10 spot. Jack Crowley's got it for now, but surely nothing is guaranteed. The midfield, Aki, Henshaw, McCloskey, Osborne, and Ringrose. Osborne is the youngest guy in the back line second youngest. Sorry, Prendergast 21. He's 22. So one of the younger guys in the squad. He's been playing pretty well for Leinster in recent times. And then the rest of the guys around him, to be fair, are a fair bit older than him. Like Aki's 34, Henshaw's 31, even Ringrose is 29, McCloskey's 32. So it is good to see a guy closer to his early 20s than his late 20s or early 30s in that midfield as well for Ireland. Obviously, Jimmy O'Brien is another one of the guys who's on the injury list. Outside backs, Hansen, Lowe, Nash, Stockdale, potentially Frawley, and then Hugo Keenan is back. Remember, he was with the Olympics back when the Irish were down. He was with the Sevens team back when the Irish were down in South Africa, but good to see him back. He's been a proper mainstay of virtually every Andy Farrell lineup. He's had a lock on that fullback position, but I don't know, the door's been left a little bit open when he played Sevens. We've got to look at some other guys having a crack there as well. The backs are a little bit younger than the forwards. Average age is kind of like 28 instead of 29. That often goes the way, not exclusively. And Cian Healy certainly brings up the average with the forwards, that is to be sure. They've also named 5 guys as the kind of accompanying training players in Thomas Clarkson, Alex Kendallen, Shane Bolton, Jack Boyle, and Gus McCarthy. So that's good. As I mentioned, like Andy Farrell cops a bit of criticism for not bringing in all the youngsters. But as I mentioned, I think he does it with Emerging Ireland, and I think he does it in this kind of way, rather than just blooding them at test level, rather than just saying, right, we'll just play a totally changed, uncapped, half uncapped side against the likes of a Fiji. He keeps it kind of more consistent. Other guys on the injury list, I think Ollie Jaeger is still injured. I think Tom Stewart's still been injured for Ulster, right? I mean, Jimmy O'Brien, like I mentioned, Jordan Lama is still not too far away, but he misses out. And then, yeah, in the backs, I guess, like as I mentioned, Caelan Blade, Nathan Doak, Ross Byrne. Ross Byrne's days may be done with, Prendergast and Frawley knocking about. I would have thought so by this point. Now, fixtures-wise, I'm kind of glad we've got you guys first from an All Blacks point of view, because the All Blacks have got Japan, and then England, and then Ireland. So it'll be our third game, whereas you guys have got us first. So if there's a chance for the All Blacks to potentially catch Ireland a little bit on the bounce, that might be it. But also that extra week, I guess, anyway, a week or two, give some of these guys who are under slight injury clouds, the guys who haven't had game time, a bit of an extra chance to recover. So it may be a little bit of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but it does feel like there's a potential opportunity there for the ABs. You feel like that's, at least in terms of world rankings, that is the hardest game of the 4. Argentina to follow, but remember they've been a team that Ireland's had the wood on in recent years. Even when Argentina's had good results elsewhere, they've struggled against Ireland. Fiji, that would be one where you would think Andy potentially changes up the lineup. And then Australia, that'll be their 4th game of their tour of Europe as well, so they could be potentially coming together well. You got the Joe Schmidt up against Andy Farrell connection going on too, so that one should be pretty interesting. But Ireland, when we look at the world rankings, they'll be massive favourites for that one too. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting wee November series for Ireland. How do you reckon they'll go? Do you think Andy Farrell has been too conservative, or do you think he gets the balance right by able to kind of have guys in the training squad and have guys in emerging Ireland as well? Would you like to see some of the kind of 35, 36, 37-year-olds hang up the boots at the end of the season, or do you think they can keep cracking on into next year's Six Nations? Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Be more kind of match previews, squad previews, reviews, stats, all that kind of jazz coming out soon. You guys take care, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.